The Viking wood secret modern builders ignored that still outlasts chemicals. Wood rots. It's inevitable, right? Well, not if you know the Viking secret that even modern builders have completely overlooked. While we spend hundreds of dollars on chemical treatments and pressure-treated timber, the Vikings were quietly making their wood last decades longer. And they did it without a single drop of modern poison. This is one of those secrets that sounds too good to be true until you see it in action, and trust me, it still beats a lot of what the 21st century calls state-of-the-art. Vikings weren't just about raids and longships. Everyone thinks of Vikings as warriors, explorers, and pillagers, but the truth is, these guys were master engineers. Their longships weren't just sleek and fast, they were rot-proof marvels. Historians have often pointed to their craftsmanship, but few dig into what actually made the wood survive harsh Scandinavian winters for decades without decaying. The trick wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was a specialized treatment, an oil-based dip infused with natural preservatives that the Vikings applied religiously. This technique turned ordinary oak, pine, and ash into materials that laughed in the face of water, fungus, and time itself. What modern builders got wrong. Fast forward to today, and modern wood treatments are a different game entirely. Pressure-treated lumber, synthetic sealants, and chemical preservatives are standard. But here's the kicker. Most of these modern solutions are temporary. They leach out, crack under extreme conditions, or worse, poison the environment while barely stopping rot. You know, the Vikings had something simpler and far more resilient. They combined natural oils, tars, and sometimes plant resins to create a coating that soaked into the wood rather than just sitting on top. It protected the fibers from the inside out. Sure, modern science can replicate some of it. But the Vikings weren't trying to patent a product. They were surviving in a world where failure meant freezing, starving, or worse. Their method had to be, well, bulletproof. That's why, even centuries later, archaeologists are still finding Viking wood that looks almost untouched by time, while contemporary treatments fail in just a fraction of that period. The secret dip that made wood almost immortal. So, what was actually in this legendary Viking dip? Well, while exact recipes vary, the key ingredients were oils and tars sourced from natural materials like pine and birch. Sometimes beeswax or animal fats were added to thicken the mix. Then came the secret kicker-controlled heating. The Vikings heated the mixture just enough to help it penetrate deep into the wood grain. The result was a protective layer that was flexible, water-resistant, and, honestly, incredibly resistant to rot. Contrast that with most modern sealants, which, well, form a thin crust. That crust may look shiny, but water can sneak in through cracks, causing rot underneath the surface before you even realize it. Vikings built for endurance. Lessons from the front lines of history. Here's where it gets really interesting for anyone looking to use this knowledge today. You don't need a Viking longship to benefit from their method. Modern builders, preppers, and DIY enthusiasts can replicate a version of this rot-proof dip using simple oils and heat. Even a small batch of pine tar mixed with linseed oil can, dramatically increase the lifespan of outdoor wood. So, the key isn't just the ingredients. It's the technique. You really have to let the wood absorb the mixture deeply, then cure it slowly. This isn't a quick spray-and-go fix. It's about creating a barrier from the inside out, just like the Vikings did. The practical applications are, honestly, staggering. Outdoor furniture that lasts for decades, wooden boats that resist rot in both freshwater and saltwater, and structural timber that survives harsh climates without relying on toxic chemicals or constant reapplication. And the beauty of it? It's renewable and environmentally friendly. Unlike modern preservatives that, sooner or later, break down into carcinogens, this method relies on materials you could, in theory, source right out in the wild. Why this matters more than ever. You might think, cool story, but I'm not building a Viking ship. But here's the point. Modern construction has gotten, well, kinda lazy. We've traded durability for speed, cost, and convenience. That means a lot of structures today will rot far faster than necessary. By studying what actually worked in the past, we get timeless lessons. History isn't just nostalgia, it's practical survival knowledge. And in this case, the Vikings weren't just surviving, they were creating wood that could outlast empires. Even during World War II, some survival engineers rediscovered similar natural treatments when conventional supplies ran short. During World War II, soldiers and resistance groups, actually turned to oil and tar-based dips to protect their structures and equipment, especially when they faced those extreme conditions. The wisdom passed down from the Vikings turned out to be so reliable that, even in the most desperate times, it could actually outperform some of the modern chemical methods people relied on. Bringing Viking wisdom into modern life is, honestly, more achievable than you might think. If you're inspired to give this a try, the process is pretty straightforward, but it does require patience and a bit of care. First, select solid, well-dried wood. Then prepare a natural oil or tar-based mixture. You'll want to heat it gently so it penetrates the wood, but don't let it boil. Apply it generously, let it soak in, and finally, cure the wood in a dry, ventilated area. Over time, this treatment forms a deep, long-lasting barrier. The payoff? Well, it's wood that resists rot, fungus, and even some insect damage, lasting far longer than, those cheap, mass-produced treatments. It's not magic. It's science guided by centuries of trial and error in some of the harshest climates on Earth. That's why even today, the Viking rot-proof dip remains a technique modern builders forget at their peril. Final thoughts. When you strip away the romance and mythology, the Vikings weren't just about raids and gold. They were pioneers of practical survival technology. Their wood dip is a perfect example. Simple, natural, and honestly, incredibly effective. Modern treatments might be convenient, but when it comes to longevity, nothing really comes close to this ancient method. It's a secret that has survived the ages, from Scandinavian fjords to World War II bunkers, proving that sometimes the old ways really are the best. So if you want wood that lasts decades without toxic chemicals, it's time to take a page from the Viking Handbook. And if this episode has given you insights you won't find in any textbook, make sure you hit that subscribe button, share this video with fellow survival enthusiasts, and keep learning from the front lines of history. The past is full of lessons. Some of them can literally save your structures from rot.